world. I'm really excited to have two of my favourite work friends, colleagues, with me to talk about a subject that I think is really exciting. So in the face of all this negativity that we're experiencing, with the obvious, I'm not even going to, that shall remain nameless, I think there's a really rare opportunity we have in terms of recruitment to connect with individuals and categories of people or segments of people that have typically been quite hard to reach. So in talent scarce markets and markets that are really historically challenging to recruit within, we have a pretty cool opportunity right now with individuals with lots of time on their hands that may have been impacted, that have never been impacted before. And so I want to talk about that a bit.
So definitely at Kieser, we, thankfully physiotherapy is considered essential service. So we've been able to operate through this crisis. But there were elements and areas of the business that we had to shut down. So it's definitely had a huge impact on us. Because Kieser's concept is a mixture of both physiotherapy as well as strengthening and conditioning. So we have big facilities where normally people can come and go like they do in a gym. And it's, the business is built on like a membership type concept. So obviously we couldn't have, or we can't have as many people as we want coming and going. So we had to shut that side of the business down, which obviously had a huge impact on what we're doing. And also on how we had to basically manage, our people or the decision making. Early on, we definitely had a bit of a panic reaction, to having to shut down, and we had to reduce significant hours for a large group of our workforce, which was unfortunate, but we just were really worried about not really making it through.
Sure.
And luckily, the credit goes to everyone that works at Kieser. Like, we were managing to find new ways of, getting our services out there that we've never even tried before. And it took us not even, I think, 2 months to get to a point where, activity levels were so high that we actually managed to get everyone back to their full hours. So, we were lucky in the sense that even now with a second wave, I guess, of restrictions, we're actually keeping afloat quite well, and we didn't have to set anyone down, or have anyone on reduced hours like that. I think we're really fortunate in that way.
And Mai, just to set the scene a little bit, give us a sense of the size and scale of Kieser and just how many people you have in the organisation that form part of your remit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 278 employees, to be exact, and it's definitely 80% of them are clinicians. So we're talking about physiotherapists, exercise physiologists, and exercise scientists.
Yep.
Kind of like man our 17 facilities that we have across the country, and the rest is administrative staff, head office, etc. And obviously, the clinicians were significantly impacted by the
Yes.
Yeah, because obviously how they can operate, and a lot of people were anxious, to come in as well. So even though we are essential and people could still come and see their physio and see their EP, a lot decided not to. Absolutely fair enough. So we had to switch it up a bit. We started doing telehealth, and try and be there for our clients in a virtual way. And it was really new to everyone, but everyone embraced it real well, and that definitely gave us, the opportunity to still create the outcomes for the clients that we want to achieve. But yeah, there was a lot of uncertainty and chaos in the beginning, for sure.
Totally. I'll come back to you and talk to you a little bit around how you've responded to that in your people lead role. But let me bring Mardi into the conversation. Mardi, can you tell the people listening a little bit around about your role and what you're responsible for, just to set the scene?
Sure. Well, I look after the people and culture team for WS Audiology. And in Australia and New Zealand, we have combined, we have 96 clinics. So, and they're hearing care clinics. They trade under Bloom Hearing Specialists. And across those clinics, we provide hearing screening and, most importantly, hearing aid fittings so that we can bring the wonderful sound back to our customers. The primary focus really of my role over the last 6 months has just been, you know, maintaining the care and well-being for our employees so that they can then pass on that customer service to our customers.
Yeah.
Because the demographics of our customers are that they are mostly older, and so therefore the most vulnerable people in our communities. So it was really critical that we provided really safe care, and that our clinics were really safe places for our customers to come to.
And did you have significant impact to the workforce composition and how your people showed up really with the restrictions in place?
Yeah, during really the first wave of restrictions, our priority and focus went really quickly into the safety of our clinics, so that we could keep them open and that our customers would feel safe to attend. And so from that point of view, we were able to keep all of our clinics open during the restriction periods. We did reduce the hours of our clinics, and that just represented that some of our customers had a preference to be staying home, as per government, you know, encouragement, particularly through those first round of restrictions. But mostly in Australia, all of our clinics were able to continue to trade through that time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mardi. Mai, you talked a little bit about your response to the crisis and the employee well-being. Can you talk a little bit more around, so the restrictions hit, we found ourselves in a pandemic. What was your role? What did you do to sort of respond to those restrictions as it relates to your people?
Yeah, definitely. I think in the early days when it all hit, we made a real priority internal communications at work. There was so many questions, obviously, constantly coming in, and we had so many questions because literally, you know, then it was changing almost on an hourly basis.
Yeah.
So we really ramped up our communications, and we had lots of all hands, virtually everyone being together, updates from the CEO. As soon as we had information, we made sure they knew, you know, just to have as much transparency as we could have. And also the you know, the hard decisions, to be really clear about, you know, reduction in hours, why that's happening, and, you know, what the thinking behind that was. And at the same time, definitely, as Mai was saying, like the safety of everyone was crucial as well. So like for our clients, because they're also definitely the demographic that's probably more vulnerable, and then also but the safety of our people, right? They had questions because they work fairly closely with people, you know, so they you know, were rightly so worried about how that would look in the day-to-day, and we just made sure that there was a lot of information flowing for them to make them feel safe,
yeah,
doing what they were doing, but also for the ones that just were too anxious about it, that it was okay to not come into work. So that also happened with some, that they decided that they didn't want to continue working, and that was okay.
Yeah, for sure. So really, I brought you onto this candid conversation to talk about hiring, which seems almost counterintuitive when we also have just finished a dialogue around restricting hours and being frugal around how our workforce continues. But both Kieser and Bloom hearing specialists, I'm specifically talking about the retail network because that's often where the hiring challenges have existed for in an audiology sense. You have continued some momentum, maybe not actively hiring the whole time, but certainly some momentum as it relates to recruitment, which I think is serving you now as things start to hopefully get back to normal soon. Mardi, can you tell me a little bit about why you chose to continue some sort of dialogue with prospective employees and just how that's looked for you and the rationale for that?
Yeah, I think after our initial focus, when COVID first hit, our initial focus was around, you know, managing the safety and the well-being of our employees and then our customers. It was about providing alternative services for customers who didn't feel like they could come in to the clinic. They didn't feel safe to come in. So that's where we really picked up telehealth options, and we rolled out Bloom Connect, which meant that people who weren't comfortable to come into a clinic could see their audiologist via a telehealth or a video health appointment, and we would be able to send out hearing aids. So pivoting our business fairly quickly, picking up a new way of operating, started to build our confidence that we could continue to operate. So, you know, we may have had some reduced clinic hours, but we were also exploring a different way of providing care to our customers. Once we got through that initial phase, then we could start to see, okay, we need a look forward plan. So early in June, we launched what we called our Time to Bloom campaign. And it was really a way of speaking both internally to our employees, but then also to people, to prospective or potential candidates, to say, we've got this, we're feeling comfortable with where we're at, we're feeling confident. It coincided with the time that we would normally launch our graduate campaign. So we wanted graduates to feel comfortable and confident about their next steps of their career when they finish their studies. So we felt it was the right time to start saying, let's look forward, let's feel really good about what we've achieved, albeit it was a mad scramble on some days to understand what the legislation were doing, the changes, but we were feeling very happy that as a company we'd come together, we'd been very agile, we were looking at new ways of working together, we were communicating in different ways, but we wanted to share that we were feeling really good about that. So the Time to Bloom campaign, it gave a lift for us as a business, but has also helped us project how we were feeling. So we also launched a recognition program off the back of that internally as well, to really be able to recognise and say thanks to our teams for what they had been delivering. So for us, looking external to recruitment, I guess the key messaging for us was, we've got this, we're feeling confident, we're feeling that the business can now continue and that we can continue on our growth path. So for those people who may not have considered Bloom in the past, it was an opportunity for them to take a fresh look at us as a potential new employer.
It's interesting that for those that don't understand or don't know the audiology sector from a recruitment standpoint, which is very, very aligned from a characteristic perspective to physiotherapy recruitment, it's a talent scarce market. There are not enough audiologists, particularly for those roles that are more regionally based and in more isolated locations, which often both clinical, both Kieser and Bloom would have some clinics that fall into that category. And so to have a campaign, and I observed that your campaign was across all social channels, and it wasn't really an explicit recruitment campaign, it was just a, we are here. Time to Bloom in its essence was a positive message around restoration and growth and flourishing. And being, looking after some aspects of your recruitment more recently, Mardi, it's really interesting to see how much proactive interest that we're getting in Bloom from an audiology candidate base that would never normally proactively reach out. And so that kind of, not even an expressions of interest campaign, but just a branding campaign, an employer branding campaign, which is really how it's been portrayed in market. Even that subtle messaging around, we've got this, in a very subtle fashion, that the call to action, even though there wasn't really a call to action in that, has been that the market's been proactively saying, hey, these guys are okay. There's confidence there. I'm attracted to that. So it's really interesting, really interesting to see the response to that campaign.
Yes, and as always, what we seek to project externally, we always do those checks to see if that matches how our employees feel. We have to make sure that we're genuinely projecting, how we feel as a business and the experience that our employees are having. And we are getting that feedback that, our employees appreciate the level of communication that they received, the level of care and safety, and they do come in very close contact with customers. They had to feel safe. They had to feel that that all of their concerns were being addressed and that their workplace was a safe place to come to. And more importantly, you know, when you're working in the healthcare sector, our employees are so driven to care for our customers. They needed to make sure that they could deliver what they needed to in terms of looking after their customers as well.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of checking inwards to make sure that that was the reality before we then projected that externally as well.
Interesting, interesting. Mai, tell me a little bit about your rationale for continuing to keep the lights on, as it were, from a recruitment standpoint at a time where active hiring probably wasn't the flavour of the month.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I have to say, you know, you did a really good kind of grouping here, because I feel like Mardi could have been speaking like the whole. Actually, that is exactly
so much similarity.
Oh my God! I'm like, I don't have to say anything. Mardi's got how you guys handled the situation and like what your priorities were. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I never had really touched base with any other company, you know, about like how they went about it. I'm like, that's exactly how we kind of felt, how we prioritized what we kind of saw, and I love it. It's just like so much similarity there.
Yeah, they're very similar.
Yeah, definitely. So for us, yeah, it was also definitely in the beginning just not on the radar, you know, in that time where the focus was a lot inwards into looking after, making sure that our team are okay, and that the customers or the clients are okay, and we find ways of delivering our services in the best way possible under the circumstances. So I think for a few weeks there was a lot of just kind of making it work and finding new ways. And the workforce has really come through, I have to say, you know, in terms of being agile. I wouldn't even say like adaptable, because it's more like they didn't even have, it didn't feel like they had to adjust to a no normal. They just accepted that you know, the new circumstance to be what it is, and they just kind of thought not about the roadblock, but they thought about like, where do we want to be and how can we still get there. And I thought that really impressed me, how everyone kind of was getting on board with that very quickly. But yeah, when it comes to the recruitment, I think, you know, we definitely we're trying also to convey the message to everyone within the company that was very similar, again, to what Mardi was saying, that, you know, there's always opportunity in challenge. You know, how can we find a way to still get through this, you know, and with a positive mindset, and maybe even seeing the opportunity that is there with any challenge. And it was important for us as well to kind of firstly make sure that there was the confidence within the workforce. So similar, we did a survey, you know, about like our COVID response and how people were feeling, trying to check in with if only us, you know, felt like really confident about everything, or if that was reflected by, you know, just under 300 people. And it was really good to see that they shared that sentiment. And we definitely, it carried us for a while, that we had that mindset of trying to look for opportunity. And when it came to, I guess, the hiring, we just decided to not ramp up, but just continue the efforts, you know, that we were putting in anyway, when it came to especially the talent pooling, because physiotherapists, especially more experienced ones, are really hard to come by. It's as you know, Sarah, like, you know, it's definitely an ongoing struggle. And we just made sure that obviously the intent was very clear that we are not hiring at the moment, but we want to be out there in network and kind of being able to be in touch with prospective talent. And we were, that was important, obviously the message for talent, but also internally we wanted to make sure that at that time there was some people still on reduced hours. We didn't want them to think, hang on, you reduce my hours, but then you go looking for other talent. So that it was really clear what the intent was, that we wanted to build, you know, relationships, so that when we came out of this, and, you know, everyone had the confidence that we will get back to our, you know, kind of growth rates that we had before COVID, that then we could have, you know, a group of talent where we could actually maybe, feed into that growth and find the right talent for the right positions fairly quickly.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that was kind of what we're trying to do. And the response rate was a lot better than pre-COVID, which I think it did surprise us in the first instant, but then reflecting on it, it kind of made sense.
Yeah, and I think, you know, as Invisible Partners partnered with you through a portion of that activity, it was kind of dramatic, the difference pre-COVID versus what we experienced afterwards. So we supported Kieser with a huge piece of strategic sourcing, and with the objective of having a dialogue with a segment of people that you wanted to hire over time, potentially. And so I think that's the thing about talent pooling. It's not a linear thing. It's not get vacancy, advertise, fill role. It doesn't work like that with talent scarce markets like audiology and physiotherapy. The smart hiring approach is strategic and is forward planning. So when you do have opportunities, the dialogue and trust is already established through campaigns like Time to Bloom, through dialogue and kind of you know, pre-recruitment need conversation like Kieser is now having and well underway with. And so I think the opportunity that I see that organizations with talent scarce pools of talent that ordinarily would be difficult is that opportunity to really genuinely build a dialogue, build trust, give a sense of who that organization might be, what the values of that organization might be, with authentically reaching out to that community of people where they are more receptive, where they do have more time on their in their hands, where they aren't necessarily in a corporate setting any longer, they're at home and they're more able to take that personal call and understand who you are in a setting that typically isn't their norm. And the dramatic change in response rates for that approach. And therefore, when you do look to reignite your growth plans, the opportunity you now have to be ahead of the pack and head of the competition, and to be able to leverage that time invested now is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And so I think there is an opportunity for people that are smart about their hiring and just want to invest in their employer brand, even if they don't know what the future looks like for next year. You know, investing in what sort of messaging you want to get behind for your organization, your employer brand, and which individuals you want to receive that messaging, and really investing a bit around that audience base. And it's much like marketing. So it's much like identifying your avatar for consumer, you're identifying your avatar for a prospective employee, that experienced physiotherapist, that QP qualified audiologist, and really understanding from a value set what you want to be known for in that market. So when you do post that job advertisement or pick up that phone to make that headhunt call, fast forward 6-12 months time, it's an easy conversation that they're completely receptive to you because they know you, they've got that basis of trust. And so I think it's a rare opportunity that I've never seen before in my recruitment lifetime, which is very long. And it's interesting. Have you, Mardi, have you observed any difference in this sort of talent scarce talent pool and the approach, the responsiveness to messaging or recruitment, really?
Yeah, I think this period, you know, the last few months, obviously people do, you know, they are working differently. They may have had a different experience from their employer as well. So there will be a lot of things that an employee would be experiencing. It may be the response that they've had from their employer mightn't meet their expectations. So they might be feeling differently about their experience, and that might mean they're more open to looking for other opportunities. It may be just simply having more time to reflect on, is this what I want to be doing? And is this, you know, the company that I want to be working for? And then exploring those options. So I think people are, you know, they are looking at this. I mean, initially, I think it was people just being very, very grateful to have ongoing employment and security. But then there's also now, I believe in the last couple of months at least, we're now starting to see people being a little bit more open to go, okay, I stayed with my employer through this period of time, but now is the time for me to look at something different. And so I think there is that receptiveness. It may be that they've seen or they've heard in the industry that different employers have offered a different experience, and that's given them some insights into their own needs or where the expectations weren't met for them. So I think there's a lot of reasons why people might be considering a change in employer. And, you know, in our industry, it's very, very competitive. And I think there is a receptiveness that is there now for some people that weren't there before.
Indeed. What about you, Mai?
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. I think that from some conversations is definitely what Mardi touched on, that you know, crisis always, you say, it brings out the best and worst in people, maybe, you know, and there is a little bit of that experience, I think, happening where in the best of times, maybe you know, where people were quite happy with their workplace, that experience changed a little bit for them, depending on how the crisis was handled. And I've definitely had a couple of conversations where people were like, you know, a little bit disillusioned or disappointed about, you know, how really the company, yeah, was maybe finding its way, losing its way a little bit in terms of what's communicated, and, you know, being very value-based, and like, you know, putting people first in the best of times, but then when times like these come, that, you know, it really doesn't reflect in their behavior and how they treat their people. And that's, you know, that always, I think, kind of like hits people at their core and probably makes them question, you know, yeah, I'm right now, maybe I'm glad to have something, but, you know, they kind of already are also maybe parting with, you know, that job in their heart, and starting to look for what's next, when I actually want to find something that, you know, where there's more value alignment, or where I feel like, you know, people are not just talking the talk. And I think it's really hard, you know. I wouldn't say that we've done everything right? Hindsight is such a beautiful thing. If you look back and, you know, what you've done and the decision that you've made, I think, you know, yeah, there's always, you know, some things that you wish you would have done differently. But I think it really comes back to, yeah, the human aspects of, like, how you treat your people. I think that's definitely something that's, I think we always knew, but then, like, times like these really bring out, you know, reiterate that for me, as in, like, you know, you do put your people first, and you stick with that. When times get rough, they will come through for you, and they will stick with you as well, you know, ideally. And I think, yeah, there's probably some very interesting dynamic going out there.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I think all, you know, once we come through the other side of this, I think my prediction is, irrelevant of scarcity of talent or otherwise, I think there'll be a big shift of people electing to make changes in their employed life, in their career life, whether that's life changes or whether that's employment shifts. I think that this, once we get through the other side, people will right size what needs to happen in their life. Just as a final question, and you maybe touched on some of these insights already, so I'll set this question to either of you, both of you. Is there anything that you've learned through this experience from a people standpoint, from a functional lead position, or insights that you've gained through this experience that you think are worth sharing? Mardi?
We went very strongly in terms, early on, our priority was around safety and well-being, and I think that care for our people allowed us then to build a new sense of trust that we perhaps wouldn't have had the opportunity before, you know, when you're not dealing in a crisis. So I think a genuine care for the well-being of your teams sets a really great foundation of trust. And probably the other learning that we also found was that communicating often and clearly really helped in terms of, and creating that two-way communication as well was a really important means of being able to deal with a lot of the questions that we were receiving, but then also just to reassure our people around what we were doing, what our focus was on, what the clear direction was for the business, and then therefore for their work activities. I think it gave everyone a strong sense of security and trust. So my key learning really is that and it's nothing different from any other period of time, but caring for your people and for your customers, communicating clearly and quickly with them, asking for feedback so that we understand how they're feeling, and we can then accommodate any concerns or questions that they may have. It creates a very strong team bond. And in a retail network, that's actually sometimes quite difficult to do. When you have a dispersed workforce, it's actually very difficult to engage people very quickly and easily. But we found through having some just very clear themes and a very strong focus that we were able to connect people in some ways better than what we ever had. I think the other key learning is that our frontline workers, so those people who are dealing with our customers, are the ones that should be the most empowered to be able to look after our customers' needs and to tell us also, you know, how we should be responding quickly to those customer needs. So it's another learning for me that we should never underestimate the strength that comes from empowering our frontline workers, you know, like our audiologists or like our hearing care specialists that we have. And that people are adaptable and resilient. So, you know, in times of a crisis, people really can come up with some amazing ideas and some real strength.
And isn't that interesting that both Mai and yourself, Mardi, both of you have commented on the advent or acceleration of your telehealth solution that you may well have already been incubating, but with this opportunity, you know, the mother of all invention, that saying that I never quite get right, requires you to step up on that front and make that happen. Mai, without putting words in your mouth, because I've just kind of given that as a potential learning, but from your people standpoint, what has been the biggest learning for you?
Yeah, first of all, again, I can, oops, sorry, I lost you there for a second. I can definitely second everything that Mardi said again. I think those were also all learnings that we had. And also that, you know, that's, again, not things that are necessarily new, but just such a strong reinforcement of, yeah, that is the right way of doing it, you know, that you have that realization of like, that's the return on the investment, you know, that you always talk about in the best of times when you say like, we have to put our people first and take care of them. And maybe to add a little bit on the last point that Mardi made about, you know, being creative and finding ways, I definitely would add that to my list of learnings. And again, that's not new, but again, just the importance of sharing a common purpose. I really realized that if the people follow like a North Star, they're going to be really creative in overcoming obstacles, because they always kind of see different ways of getting to where they want to be. So if we, you know, say really what we want to make sure is that we impact the lives of our clients and, you know, give them stronger, happier lives, you know, how to do that, there's multiple ways we can do that. If they just go down a path that someone pointed them down, like go this way, and they just head down chasing pavement, you know, once they hit a roadblock or a crisis like this, they're only going to be left with questions. But if they orientate themselves on, like, you know, the higher purpose, then they find their own ways and they come up with actually really creative ways of what can be done to get where they want to be and where we want to be as a company. And that was also a really big eye-opener for me on, you know, why do we do this work on like purpose and values and, you know, having a vision and a mission, like all these things that we know make them more engaged and probably more productive, but it's more than that, you know. And in these times it really comes out where you talk about, you know, having a strong culture. I think you can only really tell in times like these how strong your culture really is. So that's a big one. And that agility of the workforce, you know, like Mardi was saying, the adaptability, being able to pivot and turn around so quickly for everyone, you know, I think that was crucial for our survival really in this time. Yeah.
I think it's testament to both of you as individuals and leaders of your people function and the organisations in which you represent, how engaged and committed your workforce is, and how proactive and kind of brave you have been with how you've approached talent sourcing in this time of kind of I suppose, counterintuitivity, as it were, in regards to recruitment. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Sarah.
Mardi.